Your source for all things Texas Tech. This is the Ask Level podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey, what's happening? Welcome into another episode of the Ask Level podcast. Alongside Chris Level, I'm Chois Woodman. This podcast, as usual, brought to you by our friends at Cantex Roofing and Construction.
I'm Mike Hebert, owner of Cantex Roofing and Construction. Every day is game day, and we'll get it right when it comes to your roofing, construction, windows, and mirrors. Call Cantex Roofing and Construction today. Together, we are one serving you.
Mr. Level, not the result we wanted to see in Memphis, Tennessee at the Liberty Bowl. The Red Raiders fall to the Arkansas Razorbacks. We will dive into that, as that was kind of a strange game for Texas Tech. We will look ahead a little bit, a couple of questions about next year already. And, of course, Texas Tech basketball hot and heavy this week with conference play. It has arrived, and not quite sure what to think of the Big 12 Conference and Texas Tech, for that matter, heading in. So we'll dive into those topics today. Chris, how are we?
I'm doing good. Yeah, wish it would. Wish it was a better trip to Memphis. But hey, man, that's sports, right? Win
Yeah.
some, lose some. You had a lot of folks out. Arkansas had a lot of folks out. Their reserves better than your reserves. And I think and I guess we'll just jump right into it. But I think them, the combination of their quarterback and their coaches and their system all being like same as compared to you having two
Yeah.
new play callers and a different quarterback, that probably showed up maybe more than I was hoping it would. And you can't turn it over. You you were 0 for 2 on fourth downs. Again, essentially two turnovers. Then you throw two interceptions. I didn't think Will Hammond played as good as uh, you know you would have hoped. I think some folks around him maybe didn't play as well as you would have hoped. But
hmm
just generally speaking, I thought their quarterback was the best player on the field, and he
Yeah.
he had a big night, and I thought he was the difference. Taylor Green, he kept plays alive. He ran the ball, just some blown coverages or missed tackles, and you just kind of when you get down 21-3 like that, just a lot to overcome, and you just never. I don't know. They controlled the game, it was
They did.
fun to see you come back, and it was 21-3, then it was 21-19, and you thought, okay, but you just could
hmm
never get over the hump, and always chasing. So that part was frustrating because I think it probably does hurt you just a bit. I don't know how much, and we won't really know, but don't get the ninth win. Probably not going to be ranked in the preseason next year. I don't know what that'll look like. There's several teams in the Big 12 that you look up, and you just want to assume that maybe you could just skip to the promised land. But I mean, heck, even BYU and Iowa State finished with 11 win seasons,
Both of them. Yeah.
and they don't sniff the playoffs. So that's how good of a year you can actually have and not really get to where you want to go. I mean, neither one of those teams is the Big 12 champion. They won 11 games. That's rare air for somebody like Texas Tech. So
Sure. Sure.
just look around. Iowa State will graduate a lot. BYU brings a lot back. They'll graduate some guys too, but they bring some key guys back. But anyway, it's been interesting, just kind of following the postseason, and what a weird time of year it is because it's been a busy, busy month.
Yeah, and maybe those two wins you're talking about, maybe those help the Big 12 garner a little bit more respect heading into next year because you have two 11-win teams. I don't know. The one that matters obviously is Arizona State, which comes up later this week, depending on when you listen to this. But Level, the game in particular with Texas Tech and Arkansas, you mentioned Will Hammond's play. We can start there. I think Will Hammond, and you can disagree with this if you want, but Will Hammond looked like a true freshman quarterback making his first start against an SEC defense. That's kind of what it came down to for him.
Yeah, and there's obviously a difference. The last time we saw him in playing key snaps was the TCU game, and there's just a difference between preparing and knowing you're going to play, the
Sure.
other team scouting specifically you,
Yep.
knowing what you want to do. I'm sure they'd watched every snap of his this season
Yeah.
a gazillion times, and they were missing some guys on defense. But that's what, as we talked about on the broadcast, Coach Pittman said, I feel pretty good about our defense coming into this one.
Sure.
Is the offense that I wasn't real sure about, as they had the bulk of their starters back on defense, and they were all playing in that game. Uh, but I thought he underthrew some deep balls. He didn't run it as well as I would have hoped.
Hmm.
Uh, and obviously not having Taj and Josh Kelly and some of the folks around him,
Obviously.
that's part of it. That's part of it too. But obviously, Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma. I'm thinking of Maroon on the brain.
It's all the same.
Arkansas was missing. Yeah, it is. I hate all Maroon teams. A&M, Mississippi State, all those.
Why not?
Arkansas didn't have some of their playmakers as well. But I just, I was hoping that it would be a kind of a coming out party.
Yeah.
And knowing that, I thought, oh, you're going to get a whole bunch of, like a lot of Will Hammond talk and the deal, and that's what I was hoping for, in a way that he play really good and all that. But I think you see that Barron was pretty good, and
Sure.
hopefully you get a healthier version of him when he's back and all that. But again, I'm glad that you have both guys and whatnot. But and there's no way to know how much difference the game plan
Hmm.
or the operation of the game would have been if Zach Kitley was still there versus Juice Johnson. But I just don't think you can overstate that aspect. And
Yeah.
it was a one night only scenario. Is now Mac Leftwich will be in charge, and he was there on the sideline and in the QB huddles and all those things. And Barron was there obviously with an earpiece in and kind of trying to help Will out and all those things. So anyway, just a weird bowl games are weird dynamics, and hopefully we're getting past some of that awkwardness if some of this revenue sharing
Hopefully. Yeah.
tweaks it a bit, like I would hope, but we'll see.
Yeah. I think the two most or the two biggest factors in this game to me level were what you just mentioned there. The two different coordinators is something that I do think we underestimated a little bit coming in. If you had one different coordinator, maybe it changes things, but having two completely different play callers on both sides of the ball is just such a different thing because it's a plug and play thing personnel wise for Arkansas missing so many different players. It's the same system and it still largely was for Tech, but same everything else is consistent there. The other thing I think that unfortunately was a big factor was the most consistent thing for Texas Tech going into this game, and it's the fact that you were just not a good defense when it came to giving up big plays this season. That carried over into the bowl game, unfortunately, and just
It's got to stop.
miscommunication. Yeah,
It's got to
whatever it
stop.
is.
Yeah, it just was way too easy for Arkansas. I mean, they're not. I think in some cases they're not doing anything tricky.
No.
They're just a missed coverage or a broken tackle or just guys running wide
Mhm.
open, and it's not. You have a full grasp now. I think everybody does of why you were so active in the portal in the secondary and up front on the defensive line. I mean, it just has got to improve drastically. And these are the offense wasn't great, but defensively, you're just in a whole 21-3 before you just, feel like you're just down out of the locker room. And again, it alters the entire dynamic of the game because I think Arkansas, theoretically, they won that game in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
As you look back on it, you can win games in different ways and at different times. And I thought they won it right out of the gate because you just weren't really built to come back. You weren't built to really get into a shootout with what you had, and you were trying to run the ball, which was a bit different with.
Yeah.
And we'll get to Jacoby Williams. I thought that was a big bright spot in the
Definitely.
game.
Definitely.
Well, and we'll get to that because there was a defensive bright spot too that I thought one particular player that I thought had a really really good game, and I'm excited about his future. But yeah, you just the explosive just maddening, and it's been just way too often this year. And again, 132nd ranked pass defense in the country, and Arkansas exploited that. They threw
Showed.
for over 300.
Yeah.
And Taylon Green, look, I mean, he only threw 13 touchdowns on the season, and he
Yep.
just made it look pretty easy against you. But his guys, and again, some of those guys for Arkansas hadn't played a ton of football. There were some
Right.
first catches of the year or his eighth catch of the year type guys in there, and
Oh
they
yeah.
just were better than you were.
Yeah. One of their
I
guys,
thought,
their first catch of the year was what, that 96-yard touchdown, or oh yeah, it went for
yeah.
90 plus yards. His first catch of the year.
Yeah, and I love Macho. I think he's got a bright future, but he's being pushed into duty much earlier than what he's ready for. I think right now, and I love Mo Horn, and I think he's a good player, but no Braylon Lux in that game I thought really hurt you.
It hurt.
Obviously he had opted out, and then at times just not enough ability to.
Yep.
Your pass rush was active. And I thought Cofield played well. I thought Esters with the fumble recovery. You had some different things going on up
Sure.
front, but just not enough ability to get home or ultimately finish a play. And I thought the combination of that hurt you. But it's why you've added what to this point 8 players on the defensive line and in the secondary. 8 of the 17
Yep.
are at those two spots as you're just trying to and keep in mind. I said this to you guys in the pregame, but boy, you had a lot of guys over there in those fancy white Adidas tracksuits. I mean, just sitting there, and it's when they're all piled up, and you're looking at it. The Spencers, the Adederays, the
Oh yeah.
Bankses, the Ramirez's, on and on it went, and Justin Horn. I mean, just all that spills over into special teams or your depth, and
Sure.
there was a lot of, and then no Quincy Ledet is another one that started all the games. DB Carroll was far less than 100%. So anyway, on and on it went. But yeah, frustrating, but it was kind of the theme. And it's why you are so
Was.
active in the portal and what needs to get better and why a change was made on defense and all those things. So I guess we'll hopefully graduate from that. But boy, yeah, that the explosives have just got to stop.
We got a handful of questions regarding this game. I do want to save some time for basketball at the end too. But Level, before we get to those questions, who were those bright spots? You already mentioned Jacoby Williams. You can expand on that. Who were the shining stars for you in this game?
Well, I thought he's a young player, but I think he's really coming into his own as number 7, Brendan Jordan.
Yep.
I thought he had a touchdown saving tackle.
Hmm.
I shared this on the broadcast, but Joey had texted us while we were in Memphis with the GPS numbers of the practice. I guess the day after Christmas. I guess it was the day before the game,
The game.
and
Yep.
yeah, Jordan was like topped out at like 22 miles an hour, which is elite as far as speed. And I forgot which play it was. Unfortunately, there was plenty to try to remember from. It was early in the game, but I mean, he tracked one of those hogs down, from 40 yards and got him down within the 5 and at least saved or prolonged it. But I thought he made several plays. He was very active, and I think he's a versatile player. But he was a bright spot. But yeah, you need to be better at corner. And your safeties played okay, but at some point Chapman Lewis went out with a pretty what I think is a pretty severe knee injury that's gonna I think I mean when I see guys talking to family members on the
Yeah.
sideline and that's not good and you end up with Joseph Plunk out there, great kid, but you just were thin obviously at safety, but I think Brendan Jordan has got a bright future here, and I thought his speed, which you need more of, you need more guys like that, and I think he's got some measurables to him, but he certainly stood out to me.
So, transition from that, you just mentioned the name Chapman Lewis. Someone, let's see, this was Jeff that asks, what is the injury status of Chapman Lewis, Jacob Rodriguez, and Davion Carter from the game?
Yeah, I think Jacob, he went to the post-game press conference. He walked by me after the game was over and walked over and initiated a conversation with me. And he's like, man, we weren't very good tonight. We will get it fixed. And I said, hey, dude, man, you keep your head up. I'm just glad you're back here to be in this fight with everybody next year because I'm not ready to say goodbye to that guy. It's hard enough to say goodbye to,
For sure.
Taj and Caleb Rogers and Mason Tharps and Conyers, and there's so many guys that, Baskerville, which he was wronged in this game. We can get to that
Oh my
if we want
goodness.
to too. Yeah, I think Chapman's is pretty severe. That would concern me quite a bit actually. So
Yeah.
I don't know, but I can't imagine he's available in the spring. And again, I'm not some doctor. I don't have the diagnosis, but
Sure.
anytime in the past when you start seeing family members putting their, and just those conversations are just terrible, and you just realize the reality setting in that something potentially bad has happened. But yeah, I think
Awesome.
Davion Carter, which that's another topic. Davion Carter, I think he'll be okay because he could theoretically be back on this team, and I think that's a minor injury, and Jacob Rodriguez certainly was.
Yeah, I don't even know if we're going to get to all the topics, but yeah, what Level's alluding to is the new JUCO rule. Everybody gets another year if they were a non-NCAA athlete, which I think affects roughly three guys on Texas Tech's roster. Carter would probably be the most likely to come back if because one of them was Sterling Porche, who's already entered the transfer portal as well. So, um, okay, another question level. This one says, Level, why do you think the team looked so off? And you may have kind of already answered some of this in the bowl game. Well, do you think it had anything to do with lack of preparation or just all of the players out?
What's crazy is that I had, well, we were in Memphis. I probably had three random people,
Yeah,
on the team and just in various conversations that were not on the coaching staff or just, whatever, that just said, man, they've really practiced well. It's been crazy. And he goes, he goes, if Joey tells you this, he's not blowing smoke, and they've really
right.
practiced well and been excited. And then I had somebody after the game walk up to me and goes, these damn really good weeks of practice. He goes, it's the second time this year that I've been duped because I think they felt really good before
Yeah,
the Colorado game as well, and it just didn't play well. So you
yeah,
you never know. I think I've never worried about Joey getting a team prepared or excited, but it just, I think Arkansas was a bit better than you were, and you didn't have enough answers. I mean, if you play these, if both of these teams play each other straight up and everybody's fully healthy and you're getting the November version of these teams, I'd like to think that you win that game with your your full coaching staff, even the ones that aren't even here anymore for whatever reason, and all your players are healthy, their whole crew, all their playmakers and everybody that would have been healthy. I would have liked to think that you could have, you would have won that game. But yeah, just we won't know. I don't know if anybody will say it, but I think the coaching changes and just different voices and
agree. Yeah,
yeah, that and just obviously, to sum it up, I think their reserves are better than yours.
yeah. I think
You know,
everything combined, you can't really put a
yeah,
number on the or like a quantify the value of the play calling stuff. And again, you have a true freshman quarterback that played more like a true freshman quarterback. I think it was a hodgepodge of all those things combined.
yeah,
And
and Will did not play poorly. I think he needed to play really good
right.
and he didn't play really good,
Mhm.
and he was. After the game was over, I was out there waiting on Coach McGuire outside the locker room, and he kind of walked by and he said, he just kind of nodded to me. I was like, "Hey, man,
Yeah,
everybody's gonna have this is day one for you.
yeah,
You got
it
four
is.
more years of this stuff. So, I mean, he's still got as bright of a future as everybody would have thought, and it's just part of the process. But I think in maybe some ways." I think maybe this you have to take it as a positive in that he will learn from this and
Sure.
he will be better for it. Everybody will, but I think your personnel department is trying to learn from it too. Although I think they already knew your weaknesses, but it's just, and I hate saying this, I hate it, but being down there and seeing it very up close most of the time when you play these SEC teams, they do look different,
Right.
and Arkansas was no different.
And that's
bigger,
what you're trying to address in the
and
portal.
that's what you're
Yeah, yeah,
trying to add. You're trying to
yeah,
bring a different body type to your team via the portal with some of these additions. And
absolutely.
I thought at various places you just looked really small and really young, and that's not a good combination in today's version of college football.
So, some other questions from Kelly here. He gave a few of these on Twitter. You've already answered a couple, like who's impressed you the most? How would you rate Will Hammond's performance in the bowl game? Uh,
Yeah,
but
I'd give him like a B plus. You could go B minus somewhere in that, B.
yeah,
I thought, again, some of the underthrown deep balls. Obviously, he had the interceptions. Did not run it as well as, and I think part of it is you have these expectations because he's a great kid, and
yeah,
everything that everybody said about him, this is just an isolated deal, and it just wasn't his night. But he didn't have his full complement of weapons around him. Again, Taylon Green didn't either. And he made the most of it. But you could see some of the inexperience. But this is just part of it. This is part of the process. Again, I will continue to say for the next 9 months, I am thankful that you're going to have Barron and Will Hammond on your roster next year because I just can't envision a scenario to where you won't at some level need both of those guys if you want to get to where you want to go.
yeah, absolutely. Transition there. On to next year. We had one question. This one is from Jacob. It says, Level, I'm getting really excited with all of these portal additions, but I don't want to get my hopes too high. What are some fair expectations for next season?
Well, yeah, yeah, we don't need to start getting into records and all those things. Hey, well, how's the team look type conversations just yet. I think the best way to say it, and this might be my standard line, is that I think you've given yourself a chance. You are trying to put your best foot forward, and you've given yourself a chance. You are by no means guaranteed anything. You're not owed anything. You haven't. You're not going to be picked to win this league, I don't think. I don't even know if you'll be picked. And rosters are far from being completed. That's also the tricky
Sure,
part too.
sure.
There's still a lot of movement to go,
Oh, yeah.
and so it's hard to like judge it. And that's not just not only your own, but everybody else's.
Yep.
As we're sitting here talking, and Oklahoma State just picked up a big time quarterback from TCU
Yeah.
that just transferred. And so there's all kinds of movement still to come. You've got the second portal window. You're not done adding folks
Yeah.
via the portal in this immediate window and things like that. So, but the best way I can say it is you've given yourself a chance. You will be relevant. You will look a lot different, but it's still going to be difficult. You're going to have to go do some things you've never really done before, and that's
Yeah.
win all your games at home, win the majority on the road. Because as we talked about earlier, I mean, Colorado and had a phenomenal year. They go 9-4. Iowa State and BYU win 11 games. They don't sniff a title. You could be really, really good. There's just not much margin for error when you're trying to get to that next step. And
Yeah.
all I'm asking for is a chance in Arlington. That's all. I don't care
Yeah.
if you back in, if you ramrod your way into that deal, however it looks, just get me to Arlington. And I think if not, then I think you've fallen short. And I think that's just the reality of it. But I think you've given yourself a chance to do that with what you've added. But again, long
Yeah.
way to go and a lot that needs to come together before you get to that point.
I think that's a fair way to look at it, is because I think fans are obviously going to be disappointed if you fall short of Arlington. But obviously, the expectations in that locker room and around the coaching staff will be the same thing. They expect to and want to play in Arlington next year. So I think that's exactly where their minds will be as well. All right, Level. So bow on the season, 8-5. Texas Tech finishes there. Uh, Definitely a up and down season, but still the best one you have had in 15 years. So hopefully you can find a way to gain some momentum from that and build off of that going into next year. Now, hard left here. Texas Tech basketball opening up Big 12 play this week, depending when you're listening. It might be tonight, might be already the first game in the books, depending when you're listening to this week. But Red Raiders going into a Big 12 season that has a lot of unknowns because of how the teams, I think, did. You know, this league is going to be really good. It has for a decade now, maybe been the best conference as a whole in college basketball. But I think the league as a whole underperformed expectations in non-conference play, um, and that kind of leaves a lot of question marks around pretty well everybody in this league as to who's going to win, how wide open is it, that sort of thing. I think you still have a group of teams near the top, but who separates is going to be pretty interesting to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and your start to the season is a bit tricky in
Mhm.
that I mean, everybody's is going to be a bit tricky, I
Sure.
guess, depending on how
Sure.
you look at it. But
And
your
you've added two
first,
more games this year, by the way, 20 games in
oh
conference play.
yeah, yeah, but your first two of three are on the road, and these are all teams that were picked below you or well below you, depending on what you looked at in their first three.
Yeah,
But it just doesn't matter. None of these games are going to be easy or gimmies. I don't know how injuries will dictate everybody's situation, not only yours, but everybody else's as we go through this, because this is going to about to be a grind. And there's been a lot of gaps in the schedule leading up to this point, and a lot of these 8 to 10 day windows where there's been no games, but you're about to get 10 straight weeks of two
hmm,
games a week. And if a guy misses 2 weeks, which isn't that long of a time, it's going to feel like an eternity if you have a key guy out. And that's why I think they were trying to be extra careful with a guy like JT Toppin.
yeah,
So, but UCF will come to town on New Year's Eve, and they're 9-2. They've lost to LSU and Wisconsin. They had a big win versus A&M, a team that beat you to open up the season. There in Orlando, they'll be solid. They've got a couple of good guards. Jordan Ivy Curry is a UTSA transfer. They've got a kid that's a George Mason transfer that's a forward that's a double digit scorer. They've got a big time shot blocker down low, and you beat these guys last year in Lubbock, but then they got the best of you in Orlando, and there'll be a lot of same as here, and you just better hold serve at home. The
yeah,
tricky part is the Utah BYU back to backs up in Utah. If you can figure out a way through 3 games to be 2-1 or better, you really have to like the start of your conference season. And you got some Saturday home games that'll come up too.
sure.
But Iowa State and Arizona, a team that's probably the best team in the Big 12 right
Yep,
now in Iowa State and third in the country.
yep.
And then Arizona, who's been maybe the biggest disappointment in the league. But again, they still have plenty of time to right their ship. There's
And
still
tons
all
of
that
talent
same
still on
talent.
that roster, too.
Yes, they do. But those are a couple of Saturday home games coming up in the coming weeks. So, yeah, roll your sleeves up and get after it. And I just hope you could put your because that's the thing about Grant's team right now is that he hasn't really had his team yet for various reasons.
Hmm.
Guys have been out or not practicing, and it's just always been one piece here or there. I mean, the last game you played arguably was the best game I've seen you play against
Yeah,
a pretty good team right before you broke for Christmas, which was Lamar, and they were coming in on a 5 game winning streak, and won all those games on the road in a row. And you don't have Federico, you don't have Toppin, and you ran those
yep,
guys out of the building, which I wasn't expecting that.
right.
But you're about to start seeing better guards, bigger guards, deeper rosters, better coaching, all that stuff. So we'll see what we're about to get into.
First basketball question from the audience is a simple one. Is Toppin healthy? Will he play?
Well, yeah, good question. I certainly would think so. He's been out for nearly a month.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not quite that long, but almost. And I think he, Grant said to me after the win over Lamar that he they had a day or so of practices before that, but it just wasn't quite there. So you would assume that
Yeah.
with this break from Christmas and all that, because that's going to be a 10 days since that comment was made to me by the time that this game is played. So yeah, you would certainly think so.
And is
But
he a full go, or did they put a
good
minute count
question.
on him?
But
Those
he
sorts of things.
potentially
Yeah.
be rusty.
Yeah.
And then everybody's got to kind of get back into the rhythm of playing with him and him being a part of the rotation and all those things. But you're not
Yeah.
getting to where you want to go without him, period. I mean, I
Of
don't,
course. Yeah.
he's just too good. And you dealt with it some last year with Pop missing some time, with Warren Washington missing some time, Chance McMillan missed a few games here and there, but yeah, Toppin is he's just got to be a part of this deal.
Kelly asked this question: what is your prediction of Texas Tech's basketball record in the Big 12 this season?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's impossible. I think as long as you're in the top 6 or 7, because of what you mentioned earlier, your your non-conference slate, everybody's in
Yeah.
this deal is gonna come back to hurt you just a bit, I think, and it may cost you a bid or two. You people were like, "Pfft, this might be a 10 bid league, maybe
Right.
even 11."
Right.
I think you're probably back to 7 or 8, maybe more. All these leagues are going to get more bids because these leagues are all bigger now and there's fewer of them.
Hmm.
So it's not the same as like when you're traditionally the Big 12 and you got, 7 or 8 bids and over half the league went in. I mean, you're not going to get, you're not guaranteed to get over half of a 16 team league in, I don't think, but maybe. But there were some bad losses in some of that that would have helped your net and the RPI and all the data. But I think you're probably looking at finishing somewhere between fifth and seventh would be my hope. But are you healthy? Is everybody else healthy? What does that look like? But all things being equal, yeah, you're gonna have a chance to be in the tournament and be relevant and have a meaningful season. But I don't know if I see you being good enough to win this league, though. That would be a lot to ask. Kansas has been up and down. They haven't figured it out yet. Iowa State has probably been the best team. Baylor is going to be a handful. Arizona's been a big disappointment. But I think even like the West Virginia team, which was picked to be at the bottom end, they've had some bright moments in the non-conference. Oklahoma
Yeah.
State will be crafty and feisty. Kansas State's been a disappointment, big disappointment. They spent a ton of money on their roster. So, I'm probably forgetting some teams, but yeah, and then the BYUs and the Utahs and the UCFs are kind of unknowns. But it's just none of it. And oh yeah, by the way, Kelvin Sampson's still coaching in this league too. His team will be an absolute handful.
Yeah. So in the past, to make the tournament, pretty well your baseline was a 500 record in the Big 12. I know there's exceptions to the rule on either side, but if you went last year or years before 9-9 in the Big 12, you're most likely going to be in. Is that good enough at 10-10 this year, or do you think it?
I don't think you have to be 500 to get in. I
Okay.
think there's going to be, because of bloated conference schedules
Hmm.
and bigger leagues. I think there'll be a 9-11, 8 and
Okay.
12. I mean, theoretically, depending on who it was, I guess you could go, I don't know, 7-13 would be, that's a bit of a stretch. But I bet you could see somebody, depending on who it was, that went 8 and 12 get in. I don't think that being 500 or better. I think if you're 500 or better, that I'd be shocked if that is not a lock to get you in.
Yeah. Okay.
Again, depending on who those 10 wins are against, you could probably cobble together
Sure. Yeah. Because
10 wins.
not all schedules are created equally in the Big 12 this year.
You're right. And
You don't.
depending on what that looks like, but see, that's where we get into your
Yeah.
league didn't necessarily do its part in
True.
the non-conference.
Okay. Let's see. There's one more for you. 14 and over under 14 and a half for the Big 12 champion to win.
Did you set that
I'm
number?
setting that number. Yes. I'm setting that at 14 and a half.
Yeah, I'd be willing to bet you somebody ends up 15-5 or better.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, which is, I mean, going to be
That's
really difficult to do. But
yeah.
I think, yeah, I think somebody could do that. Yes.
Okay.
And
One,
part of it is because of what you just said. Some of these are not created equal. I mean,
true.
I haven't studied
Right.
Iowa States and Kansas's and Houston's and Baylor's, which I would probably put as the top four. I haven't seen who they miss,
Right.
where they go. And again, some of this is going to come down to a key injury, or that's just the way it works.
All right. Last question. This one says this is for both of you guys. What was outside of the loss? What was your least favorite thing about Memphis in the Liberty Bowl, and what was your favorite thing about Memphis in the Liberty Bowl?
Favorite thing was Jacoby Williams. Least favorite thing was watching some guys walk out of that locker room for the very last time and
Yeah.
saying goodbye to him. That's never the fun part of what we do in sports. I mean, there's a shelf life for everything, and watching a guy like Conyers walk up to me and just say, "I enjoyed it," and
Yeah,
those are
man.
hard, man. And I was like, "I wish you would have had many
Gosh,
more
yeah.
years here." He made quite the impression in just the one season here. But Mason Tharps, your homegrown guys that had a
Yeah.
big catch down the seam early in that game. That's the hard part, and that would have been with any game. My least favorite part about Memphis specifically was the unfinished stadium.
Same here. Same
Yeah,
here. Yep.
and my favorite part was the barbecue joint that and the fried chicken that I went and ate, and that choice was suggested on the barbecue joint that we had because it is legit.
Oh,
I will
man.
tell you, we're Texas barbecue people,
Yes,
and
we are.
I vouch, but I don't agree with the way they do beans there, the way we do them in Texas. But yeah, their dry rub ribs and some of that barbecue, it is legit. I will vouch.
Yeah, yeah. The ribs, yeah, it's
It
hard to
was
beat
really
that.
good. It
Very
was really
good.
good.
And then some fancy Southern food was pretty good too. So yeah, I think I agree with everything you
John
said.
Harris wouldn't agree with that, but
Well,
I certainly agree with you.
Level and his strawberry cake. I mean, he was all over it. So yeah,
Southern,
Southern
Southern,
strawberry cake.
yeah.
It was
You tried it. It was good.
it lived up to it. It lived
Yeah, it
up
was
to it. So
good.
so
Yes.
yeah, yeah. That being said, I hope we don't go to Memphis for a long time, and hope you're playing in elevated bowl games. So
Yeah, that's right. And you've been there twice in a short time, so yeah, you're probably not going there anytime soon. But yeah, I've seen enough of Memphis. Glad I've been. I
yeah,
don't hate it like some do. It a lot of history and tradition there,
sure, sure.
and all that. But but yeah, we've kind of graduated from that, hopefully. But again, hope is not a strategy, so you're not guaranteed anything. But yeah, it'd be nice to go to something bigger and better.
Agreed. And we'll sign off with that. Level. Enjoyed it. Happy New Year. Uh,
Hmm.
had another great year. Appreciate you doing this all year. We'll tab into another one of these next year and talk a whole lot more Red Raider basketball.
And my New Year's, resolution or my hope is that Choice won't be as unkind to me as he was in 2024, and that my
I'll work on
sideline
that.
equipment will work better in 2025. And
Hey now.
and I'm not joking there, but
No, you're not.
that's not Choice's fault. But yeah, we're both on the same page there.
Upgrades,
Uh,
upgrades.
yeah.
Yes.
Hey, man, enjoyed it. Happy New Year, everybody. Hope everybody had happy holidays. Be safe out there. Guns up, and we'll talk to you next time.
Absolutely. He's Chris Level. I'm Choice Woodman. It's been the Ask Level podcast brought to you by Double T 97.3.
You've been listening to the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3.